Hello and welcome back to the Sekimeiya Spun Glass. In this episode, we're going back to this choice right here. And we'll try to search the building again. Remember, this is the second timeline, I suppose, the second chapter. So we are in the POV of Mia. And we're basically now questioning whether we should just stay in the event room and eventually just wait until not quite 9 p.m., but just before where the shutter opens, fade to black. Or we'll search the building again, which is what we'll do now. As the time kept passing, Mia's conflict grew. The Atsuki they'd spoken with had said that if they stayed together on the crystal floor, everything would turn out to be fine. However, did that imply that if they were to scatter through the building, that guarantee would be voided? Who had taken the last elevator trip? How did that Atsuki plan to accomplish what he'd said? Would anyone be found if they were to inspect every floor? Can't you see already that we weren't lying? Mia spoke. Someone must definitely be here, that's not a question. If you think we want to leave this room empty as we search, someone can just stay here. Atsuki threw her a frown. They had managed to keep everyone together, so what was with that sudden input? You didn't listen to me, did you? Neither of you will leave this room until the shutter opens. I'm sure there's a reason why you want us to look for whoever's here, and given what you just said, it might not be related to this room. What would that be? There's no harm in searching as long as someone stays behind. It can be you if you want. Bad idea. Atsuki joined in, baiting the same reaction as before. Stop it, we're not leaving. It's very late already, so there's no reason to at all. And I'm going alone. What? No, you... Mia didn't give anyone a chance to object. She sprinted toward the hallway A door, and before Akira had time to react, she ran to the stairs. What the fuck? Stop! What the fuck are you doing? Sai's voice didn't reach Mia, who had disappeared to the second floor. Everyone ran behind her, hesitant to go up, as her goal could have been to lure them away. Meanwhile, Atsuki was lost and began to feel a despicable anxiety building up. Why was Mia objecting to the only thing they had to do? What's happening? Erina peeked out of the crystal room after Sai had called the elevator. Erina, please, you and Isla stay in the event room. It's very important. Atsuki, you stop right here. I have no fucking idea what you're doing, but don't follow her. Knowing he was going to be physically stopped, Atsuki ignored Sai and dashed up the stairs. In his mind, he only wanted to stop Mia and ensure that whatever she was doing didn't prove fatal. What the fuck? You two follow it. Someone has to take the elevator. I'm doing it since I have the key to the attic. On the second floor, Akira and Kate found Atsuki inside the partitions. Mia had made it sound as if she wanted to search the whole building, so she could have been anywhere. Atsuki, wait. I won't wait. We have to find her. It's dangerous to be alone. Sai passed a spy, so this is going to go quickly. It didn't seem like Atsuki was lying. Both Akira and Kate thought that he genuinely wanted to find Mia as soon as possible. If they were to fight over it and Mia and Atsuki had something planned, it was possible that fighting itself was what would allow it to succeed. The three of them moved one floor higher with the condition that Atsuki wouldn't be left alone. As long as the elevator wasn't used again, they were fairly certain that Mia wouldn't be the only person found. They knew that it was very likely someone else was present on one of the floors. Atsuki and Akira entered the three partitions of the third floor, but they were empty. The same occurred one floor above. The fifth and the sixth were desolate as well. It should have been settled then. There were at least 5 people in the attic. Mia, Sai, Shiria, another Atsuki, and a mysterious 5th person. They approached the door to the attic, but someone came out of it first. It was Mia. When she saw the group, she stopped moving. As the three got closer, they saw there was blood on her forehead. What happened? Are you okay? I don't know. You don't know? Yes, I think I might have lost my memory. Nobody responded. Instead, they waited, wanting to hear that it had been a joke. But that didn't happen. After a few silent seconds, Mia lowered her eyebrows. I'm serious. I must have hit my head on these stairs. She showed them what she was talking about. Just like they'd seen hours earlier on the crystal floor, the edge of one of the steps was covered in blood. Did you trip while running up then? I said that I don't know. Must be my blood though, because it's fresh and I'm bleeding.
Wait, are you really saying that you lost your memory?
Yes, do you think I'm joking?
Atsuki, what the hell is this?
What? I have no idea. What exactly do you not remember? I said that I don't remember anything.
Nothing at all?
I think so.
You're joking. You hit your head and lost your memories, like in a damn movie.
Yeah, memory loss is a real thing, and why are you all so defensive? Shouldn't you be worried? Everyone was very hesitant. Could you really have been telling the truth? The fresh blood on the stairs was unquestionable. So you don't remember anything in general? What about the date or who we are? Again, no. Where are we? Answering that was too ridiculous. However, if she was lying, what was the purpose? They felt conflicted, but they'd already noticed that Mia seemed different. She had never looked at them like that, and her words felt colder than before. You're Mia. Do you not know that either? Atsuki spoke. No, it's pretty strange, but I don't know anything about myself. But I know how to speak. I suppose this is how this kind of memory loss works.
You really can't be telling the truth.
Why not? Would I lie about this? My head does hurt a lot. If you hit your head and you're not lying, it should be short-term memory loss, right? Everything should slowly come back to you soon. I don't know. Where are we though? Why is there a camera there? I doubt that's recording. You know what Ashia Tower is? That's where you are. Not really, no. It's a big building where we got trapped this morning. Do you not know any of that? There was an attack and the exit closed. Oh, really? So we can't leave?
Atsuki, do you actually believe she's telling the truth?
I am telling the truth. Is memory loss that rare? I don't think so, right?
I wonder what Sai will have to say about this. He should be in the attic.
Who's that? Someone else we got trapped with. Erna and Isla too, who are on the lowest floor. It's almost time for the exit to open, so you'll have to go straight to the hospital. Nobody could believe that what they were hearing was real. The timing felt too coincidental, and they knew that Mia had to run to the attic for a reason, intentionally going against what everyone else wanted. Do you think this might have anything to do with the Sekimeiya? A side effect or something? The what? You really don't remember that either. What about the murders? You shouldn't be alone. Do you not remember Shirei either? Murders? Did someone die? Yes, a killer is with us. Really? And it could be anyone?
It's not so simple, but yes.
See.
Sai didn't take the elevator again, so he should still be in the attic. Maybe he found someone.
It's very possible. Someone? Do you mean the killer? I don't know. They stepped into the living room, but nothing could be heard. Since the elevator was there, they didn't want to make noise. The door to the hallway was open, so they peeked through it. Immediately they saw something. One of the bedrooms was conspicuously open. As soon as they looked inside, there were gasps. Sai's body lay facing down on the floor. His back had been pierced, apparent by the narrow hole in his shirt, which was soaked in blood.
Oh my god, no!
The four people stared at the scene with wide eyes. Sai had been killed. Kate slowly crouched to grab the keyring, which had fallen from Sai's pocket. Having it on his person was what had allowed his death. Then they ran to the living room. His killer must have been there, hidden in one of the rooms. They couldn't let them escape.
You two, wait here.
The young pair was left behind in the living room, while Akro and Kate looked through the rooms, their heartbeats hammering in their chests. Atsuki's heart did the same as he slowly opened his mouth. Are you telling the truth? Why did you want to go to the attic? He had noticed something. When they'd all stepped into the living room, he had looked at the floor. There he'd seen recent footprints going from the stairs to the hallway, and then back. He only wanted an explanation he could accept, but his question hardly garnered a reaction. Akro and Kate confirmed that the elevator was present and empty. Very carefully, they looked at the storeroom and then walked to the kitchen. Lastly, only the two bedrooms remained. In the right one was Sai's lifeless body, but they couldn't find anyone else. The last place was the mirrored opposite bedroom. Aside from its lack of a corpse, it was identical. Baffled, they walked back to the living room. There, they saw Atsuki's dead body. Yeah, it was definitely Mia. I figured, at the moment Atsuki mentioned the footsteps leading to the hallway and back to the stairs, I was like, yep, it was Mia, wasn't it? Yep, it was. Unlike Sai's, his body was facing the ceiling. The same type of wound was present in his chest, blood rapidly flowing out of it. Neither of the men could believe what they were seeing. That also explains where, if you remember, because I just looked back at it between the last and this episode, just looking through the history of the chapters, the endings of them basically. And I remembered, I read again and remembered because of it, the last things Naomi said before the shutters opened in chapter 2, which were that there was a murderer and the culprit behind the whole incident. Now, one of those two, I imagine, could very well be Sai. But the other, who knows? Possibly Mia.
Was it her?
Mia was nowhere to be found. Only after he died did Only after he had died did Atsuki's words begin to carry weight. In the end, they thought he really hadn't been working with her. Akira and Kate couldn't move. The killer was near them, but where? Could it be that one of them had done it while they'd each looked at a different bedroom? No, Mia was the killer. They couldn't think anything else. If another person had done it, she would have yelled. If she had run away, she probably would have been heard. Therefore, the only possible conclusion was that she had killed Atsuki and walked away. Why? Such a question was irrelevant. If she had shown her true colors openly, everyone was in immense danger. Akira approached the elevator, but he couldn't open its door. It was brought down. They knew they had to hurry, but it wasn't so simple. As they ran down the stairs, the fear continually caused them to stagger. At any moment, their lives could be extinguished. They were trapped with a killer who had a weapon and had gone almost 12 hours without being caught. Would they be able to get through the last stretch? An attack could have been waiting around any corner, but the thought of Erina and Isla pushed them onward. However, as they walked down the stairs, they were oblivious to the nightmarish yells that resounded at the bottom of the tower.
Erina, Isla, you there?
They ran to the open door. Through it, they saw exactly the image they had tried to forbid from entering their minds. Mother and her daughter lay on the floor, their bodies no different from the two in the attic. Their torsos had been pierced and blood was slowly spreading across the floor.
There's no way.
Kate, you have the keys, right?
What?
She must want everyone dead. We need to lock ourselves up somewhere, but get the Sekimeiya out. If we're attacked, we'll be able to escape by touching it.
Agreeing that it was the best course of action, Kate ran to the cabinet and unlocked it. Moments later, the hallway B door opened. After a minute had gone by, a third body lay between Erina and Isla. It was Akira's. It had been pierced multiple times in the stomach, and no trace of life dwelled in it. Next to the cabinet was the grey Sekimeiya. When the time came, the shutter opened and the police rushed into Ashia Tower. In the lobby was the first indication of the bloodbath that had transpired. Dead eyes watched the officers from the floor, inviting them to a hell of corridors and blood. Afterward, many more bodies were found. In the event room, Erina's, Isla's, and Akira's. In hallway C, Mia's. On the first staircase, Kate's. Close to them, thrown on the floor, was a screwdriver covered in more than one person's blood. In the attic, Atsuki and Sai rested. All of them were dead. In addition, it was confirmed that all of them had died instantly. That meant that they couldn't have killed each other. However, the police raided the whole building and didn't find anyone else. Huh. Okay. Now that's confusing. Alright, so we are going unknown culprit on this one. Or potentially, like, you know, other version from the past or something like that. Ooh. Because before they had stepped into Ashia Tower, not an ounce of life had existed within it. The grey Sekimeiya was found next to the cabinet and placed inside it. In the attic, hidden in a drawer in the kitchen, a playback device was found. Curiously, one of the officers pressed the play button, but nothing seemed to happen. After fiddling with it, he determined that it was broken. In the storeroom, the movable wall was discovered. When the police managed to open the door behind it, size mark was removed. So then, what had happened? Who had killed everyone? Every single person who had gotten trapped in the tower had been attacked by someone else. An investigation went on for a very long time, but nobody had access to the swathes of information that they were missing. So when a conclusion was reached, it was impossible to feel that the truth had really been found. The sudden bloody spree was the final mystery of December the 15th, 2011, which eluded the grasp of everyone who tried to solve it. Reward. Honestly, I'm not even sure where to start with trying to figure that one out. What on earth happened there then? I mean, I think it is very reasonable to assume that Mia killed Sai. But beyond that, Mia killing Atsuki, sure. What? Because even if we're thinking back, that even if we're just thinking potential persons who are missing from that scene in particular, we're looking at Shiria, we're looking at Naomi, and we're looking at a third unknown, basically. At this point, I really don't believe there is a third unknown, like just someone else entirely. And of course, we're looking at potentially a doppelganger of anyone, really. A second Mia, a second Shiria, a second Atsuki, who knows? A second Sai, even. I don't think, well, actually thinking about it, I think the only people we've conclusively never seen like a second version from another timeline of are Kate and Isla. But I think if I remember correctly, we are pretty sure Isla did travel back in time and was like her own imaginary friend. So we know something there. So the only person like conclusively that definitely never had like another version of themselves was Kate. Because even Akuro, I mean, he didn't conclusively have one. But even he had that weird spell where he was kind of confused, dazed, remembering different events. So something could have been going on there. Either way, I don't really know what could have happened. I guess without thinking about it too hard, potentially Kate could have been a factor. The ending also didn't specify that it couldn't have been a suicide. The ending only mentioned about instant death, which I don't know how you do that with a screwdriver. Like, I don't think you can actually achieve instant death that what's the word for it? That consistently, I guess. Or whatever it was, a screwdriver, a knife, who cares? I don't think you can instantly kill someone with something like that. I genuinely, I don't think it's possible. No matter where you hit, even if you have like the most perfect strike possible, it still wouldn't be instant death. And I think they were all like pierced in like maybe the heart, the stomach, whatever. That's not instant death. So maybe Mia killed everyone and then herself is what I'm thinking, basically. Either way, we'll continue here, where Shiria is now in the process of going back to the past. Also, while I was looking through these the recent endings, because I was specifically looking at the ending to chapter 1, Mia was about to be found back in the tower about 40 minutes after this point. Just to keep that in mind. At that point, Shiria disappeared from the bathroom. She also disappeared from the crystal floor and from Ashtia Tower. She went much further through time than she had expected. The oblivious people who remained in the lobby would soon realize that something had happened and would search for the missing Shiria through all 7 floors. What? Where is this? I felt my body lying on cold stone. I opened my eyes, but I couldn't see a thing. Is this still the tower? I tried to stand up, but my whole body hurt. When I moved, I realized I was wearing different clothes under my coat, and that the air was much colder. What? I suddenly felt a throbbing pain in my head that stopped all my movements. It wasn't only my head, there wasn't a single part of my body that didn't hurt. I stayed still, hoping the unbearable headache would fade away. In the meantime, my vision began to adjust a little. I couldn't see light anywhere, and I was still able to make out the space around me. Is this underground? It does kind of look like a sewer system from the little you can see there. That was all I could really tell, but when I looked up, I understood where I was. Below the house where the gas explosion took place. The ceiling is broken, and there's a bit of light. That's where I fell from. I was in some kind of channel, directly below the gem shop we'd gone to that day. Bewildered, I tried to think. However, an immense headache was still numbing my mind. Did I appear here? From the tower? I didn't think that was it. I remembered having travelled from the bathroom on the crystal floor, but something was amiss. Every time I travelled through time, I'd instantly appeared somewhere. That time, though, I'd woken up on the ground and my whole body hurt. Had there been something in between them? It felt like there had to have been, but my mind was too foggy to know. Where am I? How far back did I go? Under the thick brown coat I usually wore, I identified the clothes I was in. They were the ones I'd woken up with in the hospital, the ones I'd worn the day Mia died. I kept trying to push my mind for an answer, but I had no idea what had happened. When I finally collected myself somewhat, I noticed that I had my purse around my shoulder. I unzipped it and felt the interior with my hand. The knife isn't here. Why did I not travel with it this time? Wait, this... I retracted my hand, gripping a familiar object. After fiddling with it, a rectangular light appeared in front of me. It was my phone. The time displayed 21:10, but I only wanted to look at the date. I navigated to the settings menu to access the current day. Then I stared at the screen, reading the date over and over. November the 30th. Wait, that doesn't make any sense. November 30th? Did I go 15 days to the past? 21:10. That day, at that time, I was already in a coma. I'd fallen from that ceiling up there, and I woke up in a hospital room days later. I looked around me, but I didn't see anyone else. If that's where I am, has my old body already been taken to the hospital? But why does my whole body hurt? This has never happened before. My mind felt really clouded. After touching the Sekimeiya, I'd woken up in that sewer. I hadn't instantly appeared there, so I didn't fully understand what had happened. Could I have overwritten my past self since I touched the Sekimeiya while willing to change the past? I tried to stand up, but a sudden piercing headache made me collapse to the ground. My cheek hit cold stone again, and the faint light slowly vanished. I wanted to move, but none of my muscles responded. My entire body was sore, like I'd received countless punches. Even the scarce willpower to reopen my eyes left me, as if I'd exhausted all my energy in an instant. My senses dulled, the world darkened, my coat tightly enveloped me. And then it was gone. The cold and pain disappeared too, leaving me floating in the middle of nowhere. There was no sound. I was conscious, but I didn't know where I was or why I was there. My awareness became a single thin stream devoid of thought. The stressful events of the tower disappeared, and the tension I'd been holding in for the previous weeks vanished. A great sense of relief washed over me. No, I was on the ground in an underground tunnel. That fleeting notion sparked into my brain multiple times, but it was never enough to disrupt the silence. The world was consumed by my growing existence, until eventually I was the only thing in it. Perhaps it had always been like that. For longer than time itself, I drifted aimlessly. Who was I? I was surprised to feel curious about that question. The nothingness had become the only thing I knew, so the tiniest vestige of uncertainty was enough to bring me into disarray. A distant figure began to take shape in the darkness, and it grew until I became one with it. That's me. And there's Aski. Not from now, but when we were still children. Laughing, playing, having fun. Hey Shiria, check this out. He handed me a small flower with dark purple petals, contrasting with the white world surrounding us. So pretty. I'm sure Danny would love it. I gingerly placed the flower on the stuffed tiger's head, then held it up to my face. Wow, it looks so good on you, doesn't it? Without missing a beat, the boy in front of me spoke up. I'm sure it would look nicer on you. He took the flower off the toy and began fidgeting with my shirt. When he was done, I couldn't help but smile. Seamlessly, the world changed. We were riding on our bikes down the streets of Yoshibana. And then we were drinking hot chocolate after playing in the snow. One after another, fond memories played in my vision, and I once again became a child. I wasn't just experiencing memories, I also created new scenarios. We'd always wanted to hang out in the big cities, and that had become possible. The innocent pleasure dimmed softly as the world faded back to nothing. I couldn't object or resist, as if I was a baby on the verge of awareness. After an eternity, my mind reawakened. Another figure appeared far in the distance. Mia. I liked her as a friend, but when did it get so complicated? She was gone, but even when she was alive, things didn't feel completely right. Myriad moments before her death flowed into my mind. We were smiling and laughing in all of them, but as I watched us from above, I just wondered if she'd ever actually considered me a friend. We had spent time together, but I wasn't sure what it had meant. She joined our little world and worked it into something different. Not better, not worse, just different. And her departure made it very different once again. We had access to a time travel device. We had no idea how it worked, but could we use it to rescue her? Did I even want to rescue her? Of course I did. Anything to bring us back to a sense of normal. Anything to bring back the happier days. Were the days with Mia better than the days without her? Yes, but why? Why was it all so messy? My existence folded in on itself. A momentary jolt, a sense of disorientation, running around in the darkness. Was the Sekimeiya a blessing or a curse? An object that reworked the flow of time? An object that kept us confined in the past? My senses dulled again. I kept drifting in the dark and gentle abyss. Or maybe I wasn't drifting at all. I realized I didn't know anything. I felt a cold breeze as the darkness began to lift. Part of me wanted to stay there forever, wrapped in black. The sensation of possessing a body gradually came back to me. My limbs existed again. In an instant, I became acutely aware of the pain in my cheek. I was resting on a pebble. I looked around me, the faint light illuminating the sewer. My eyes were wet, almost as if I'd been crying. Still underground. What just happened? My head throbbed relentlessly while I came to terms with the realization that I'd fallen unconscious. After so long, I tried to move my arm and received a faint response. Right, I just traveled from the tower. It's November 30th. Again. I exhaled deeply, pulling myself together. That dream, if it could be called that, was almost like the coma I'd been in once already. A haze of half-concepts. It was almost frightening how lost I'd gotten in it. I remembered fragments of it, but the question of whether I wanted to save Mia was still vividly present in my mind. Of course I want Mia to live. What kind of question is that? And what would Atsuki do without her? I rested for a bit longer, trying to drive off those intrusive thoughts, until I was eventually able to sit up. I was still lost in the dark, so I pulled out my phone and looked at the time. It was 21:34. It's only been about 30 minutes. I laboriously stood up and took some mindless steps. I couldn't feel anything around me except the hard concrete. I supposed it wasn't a sewer that I was in, since it didn't really smell at all, but I had no idea what it was. Wait, what am I supposed to do now? Can I really change the past? What the hell is this? Did I appear 2 weeks into the past but mere minutes too late to save Mia? It can't be, right? Why would I have gone so far back? Completely perplexed, I walked forward toward the darkness. It wasn't possible to reach the hole above me, so I had to hope I could walk out of there. What if? Completely random idea. What if the Sekimeiya doesn't actually have any time at all to load up? What if it works on preconceived notions? What if it teleports you exactly as far back as you think it'll teleport you back? Just a random idea. After a few steps, I ran into a wall. The darkness should have been terrifying, but I wasn't scared. I needed to get out of there and hope I could find out where I was. I flipped open my phone, but the light from the screen wasn't enough to illuminate the path ahead. After feeling the space, I knew there were two tunnels in front of me, one much larger than the other. I could only go through one, so I kept walking toward the one that seemed wide and dry. If I can change the past, can I prevent the attack in the tower from happening? I can at least prevent Atsuki and myself from going there, but would this really work? What would happen to me? I've already thought of this, but if I change the past, would I remain in a world with another version of myself? And if I can do that, should I? Instead of trying to travel back one more time and save Mia in the first place? The darkness had become absolute. On that day, the Sekimeiya must have been somewhere. As Ashia's announcement had already been made public, they were probably keeping it somewhere in the tower. I walked for minutes, every individual step feeling surreal, and the bright image of the screen frozen in my mind. November 30th. I kept going, hugging the wall next to me. At one point, the path began to slant up, making every step tougher. How do I get out of here? Should there be a ladder somewhere? For an entire day, I'd grown used to hearing the echo of my own footsteps with no other sound. I wasn't in that tower anymore. The sensation was identical. I slowly increased my pace. I was so close to finally being outside again. The tunnel was a straight path, seemingly unending. After walking for a while, I started to feel a little desperate. Was I going toward an exit, or was I completely lost? I couldn't see anything that distinguished where I was. I was too dedicated to my path to turn around and go the other way. It almost felt like there would be a monster waiting behind me if I did. I could only keep moving, almost like I was in a dream of an ever-lengthening corridor. Finally, that sensation ended. I located a ladder and climbed out of the channel's end. Around me was a grassy field covered in snow, the sky firmly situated above me. It was real. I couldn't fathom the image. In front of me, I saw Yushibana, entirely still. A chilly breeze forced me to shrug my coat higher and cover my neck. I'd been trapped for hours in the building. I could see the vague outline off on the horizon. But that wasn't all. Seeing Yushibana below me brought a relief I hadn't known was possible. Seeing that I'd been released, all my questions fell away. I didn't know why I was atop that hill or what had happened to me. All I knew in that moment was a soaring sense of liberty. I was actually free. I looked inside my purse again and saw keys. These belong to my apartment. They're not Atsuki's. The tickets aren't here either. I pushed off the snow on the stone that formed the tunnel and sat on it. Every part of my body still hurts, especially my back. I was breathing calmly, observing the silent town. From there I could see the entirety of Yushibana. Close to me was the school I'd gone to, and a familiar park next to it. There was no way to really be sure, but I assumed that the tunnel I'd gone through was part of some kind of drainage system. It sloped down the hill into the center of town, and I couldn't think of any other function for it than collecting water that would otherwise flood. It didn't really matter. I was out. The drainage channel, or whatever it was, hadn't swept me away or drowned me. That long tunnel was a path to salvation. I didn't know the true state of the world I was looking down on, but all by myself I was finally able to experience peace. Forcing myself to move, I stood up and began to descend a thin path that started from the tunnel. I sensed my boots pressing on the snow until I was down the hill. On turning around, I saw the trail of footprints that I'd left. As bizarre as it was, I looked at them as proof that I was really there. My phone showed 21:48 and I was behind my school, where I'd rarely ever been at such a time. Much further in the distance, I could see the top of the only structure that rivaled Ashia Tower's height, the hospital. Is that where I am right now? Or am I being brought there? I couldn't comprehend yet how the travel had worked, but I walked around the school and found myself in the park we'd been that very day. I started to hear faint voices around me and saw dark silhouettes next to one of the benches. Of course I wasn't alone in the town. Unaware of where I was headed, I followed the steps we'd taken at a time that felt very far in the past. Tall, round lights illuminated the rustic part of Yoshibana. That day we just happened to end up at a modest shop, but the present me deliberately walked to it. What will happen if they see me? There's gotta be someone there. That's bound to change the past, right? I remembered all the narrow streets. No light could be seen through almost any window, and most of the footprints still on the ground ended at various doors. I looked from the final turn and stared at where the shop had been. In front of the door were two people talking to each other. One of them wore a suit and the other wore casual clothes for the cold. I don't recognize either of them. Should I step forward? What would they ask me, and how would I answer anything? I chose to stay still. If the past could be changed, that wasn't the way to do it. Next to them was the window that had once grabbed their attention. I couldn't hear anything they were saying, but they hadn't sensed me either. Not long after, the man in the suit walked away. The other person saw him off and stayed where he'd been. That gave me the chance to look at his face. Oh, it's the owner of the shop. The other man was walking toward me, so I backed off toward another path to avoid being seen. I suddenly bumped into a car camouflaged by the dark. In the sky, the moon was hardly visible, not helping things. Fortunately, the snow on the ground told me where I was every step. I seemed to be the only person there, so I kept going until I arrived at a road full of wheel marks. The streets were wider and a couple walked by me. After so long, there was life around me, and the strain on my shoulders slowly faded away. Should I just go home? Atsuki was also brought to the hospital, and I was there for a week. I have the keys, so I really can just go home. For what purpose was I in the past standing next to a lonesome streetlight? I knew I had to do something. I could change history, but sleep was the only thing on my mind. My body still felt battered and weakened. Getting to my bed was my priority. Everything else had become a background concern, as there was nothing I could do right then. Why am I so tired? I feel different from when I was in the tower. Is it because this is how I was at this time on November 30th? My apartment was close by and I needed to rest. At that time of night, nobody should have been there. The cold was starting to get to me, so I tightened my coat around my shoulders as I walked. Taking my time, I continually looked at my surroundings as I walked, all of them covered in the same white layer of snow. What will I do? I can only hope that I'll understand everything better tomorrow, but I should have enough time to think about it. If I'm right, my parents aren't even in Japan. I'm about to spend a week in a hospital, and then I'll go to live with Atsuki. I can just be at my apartment until the 15th comes again. But then what? Do I try to make us not go to the tower? How would I attempt to prevent the attack from happening? Even if Atsuki and I don't go, there are people who will die. And in both cases, I'm giving up on going to the past again to save Mia. If the past can be changed, I can't just leave her to die. But this is still really scary. At the time I change the past, I'll be stuck in a world with another self of mine, and I won't be the original. The me that Atsuki saw in the event room, will it really be me? Will I decide that I don't want to change the past just so that I can live? Just so that I keep living in a world where I'm the only version of myself? I wouldn't do that, would I? Arriving home, I saw a few people talking to each other. They had no idea I was from the future. Of course, nobody knew about the Sekimeiya's powers yet. How is that actually possible? The Sekimeiya has already been announced as a discovery, so why will they let the public touch it with what it can do? Did Ashia not know about that? I have no idea where it even came from. In the past, all those questions still had no answers. I turned toward the narrower street full of apartment blocks and looked far ahead. I stopped in the middle of it and went up to an upper white metallic staircase. On the way, I took my keys out and walked to a door below a C plate. I stood in front of it and tried to sharpen my hearing. I can't hear anything. A little nervous, I inserted the key into the keyhole and kept it there for a while. Finally, I decided to turn it, making little noise. Should I try to be silent? If I'm somehow in here, do I want to not be heard? What would I even do if I see myself? I can't go anywhere else. I opened the door slowly. The faint light of the night illuminated the way in, and I took a hesitant step forward. Naturally, I knew where the light switch was, so I reached out to it while I glanced around. When the ceiling lit up, I saw the same entrance I'd seen countless times before. Next to the door, I saw my reflection in the mirror. I looked a lot better than I'd imagined, probably because the body I was in hadn't made it to December yet. I closed the door and stood in the middle of the room, not much warmer. I still felt uneasy, so instead of taking off my shoes, I opened the door to the living room. There was a large window with its blinds closed, and in the center of the room a wooden table on top of a green carpet. Everything looked like it had when I'd left on the 30th. I really was at home. There was an old TV on top of a low stand that I rarely used due to the poor signal, and colored cushions were scattered all over the floor. Next to me was the door to the kitchen. In the sink were the few dishes I hadn't washed, and in a corner was the laundry I hadn't finished. That day I'd been really looking forward to meeting Atsuki and Mia, and although we hadn't ended up doing much, I'd been excited to go. I walked back and opened the other door in the entrance. After lighting up the short hallway, I stepped to the first door. My bedroom was behind it. Farther back were the last 3 doors. One led to my parents' bedroom, the other to the bathroom, and the last was a guest room with a small bed. I'd been storing things in the guest room since it had been unused for so long, cramming a bookcase full. Recently my drive to read had dropped off, but I still kept my favorites front and center. Nothing was out of place. Everything I'd put in there hadn't moved even slightly. There really is nobody here. It was the same modest apartment I'd always lived in, but it seemed like it had last been there a very long time in the past. I'd left a trail of slick, snowy footprints, so I went to the entrance and left my boots beside the door. I entered my bedroom and draped my wet coat in a chair. My headache had been weakening, but many of my muscles were still sore. I didn't feel hungry, and my faint thirst was dwarfed by how tired I was. I left my purse next to the bed and fell on it with the clothes I'd been wearing. I closed my eyes on top of the large pillow and gradually wormed my way under the blankets. I was exhausted, but I didn't fall asleep immediately. There were too many things I had to think about. I just spent more than 12 hours sealed inside Ashia Tower, so the sensation of my bed was far beyond welcome. However, it seemed I had suddenly arrived on the day where everything had happened. In the distance of the town must have been Atsuki, crying about the possibility of having lost his 2 closest friends. Somewhere else, other people must have been thinking about the attack they'd orchestrate on December 15th. I soon felt like I should have turned on the heater, but I couldn't get out of bed. My mind went through most of the events I'd been caught up in, and I still didn't reach a single conclusion. I'd wanted to change the past, but comfortable as I was beneath 2 blankets, that was comparable to moving a mountain by hand. Huh? A sound reached my covered ears and woke me up. I was frightened at first, but I quickly realized it had come from outside. And it didn't stop. Fireworks? Hearing fireworks in Yoshibana was rare, but it was the start of the holiday season. I removed my head from under the blankets and paid attention to the sound. While it wasn't close to where I was, brief sparks of light could be seen through the window. I knew the air was still chilly, but I braced myself and pushed the blankets aside. I sat up and looked at my phone. It was 1:06. When I looked behind me, I saw the large screen of glass turning orange momentarily, reflecting the distant light. They really are fireworks. I never hear them here because the police always shut them down, but I bet someone snuck some into town and wanted to celebrate the holidays. See, I couldn't help but feel as if they were welcoming me, although I knew the truth was far from that. I was in a coma, so I'd never truly heard or seen those fireworks. There was nothing I wanted more than to view them with Atsuki and Mia, but that couldn't happen. Would it be possible to change the past so that I could? The past is really changing though. It had already been changed. That I was seeing those fireworks was the proof. I was allowed to live through what I'd missed out on, the 2 weeks where I hadn't lived. I simply stared at the distant lights. My eyelids were drooping, but I didn't want to stop watching. The fireworks didn't last much longer. After a few minutes, the stronger ones went off and they all calmly ceased. I dropped back onto the bed, still with no energy to turn on the heater or put on warmer clothes. That time I fell asleep almost instantly. I opened my eyes. I really wasn't in the attic. I was in my own bedroom, facing the pillow I'd evidently rolled off of. The whole room was lit, so sunlight must have been going through the glass of the window. With my face still under the blankets, I closed my eyes again, not yet wanting to face the cold. The first day of December. Mia's not here anymore. I'm in the hospital, and Atsuki's probably at his house. Or I guess I'm actually in my bed. I vividly remembered parts of a dream I'd just had. We'd all still been in the tower, and while the details escaped my grasp, it had entailed a messy conflict with the Sekimeiya. Out of nowhere, I realized I'd been lying in bed for a while without doing anything. It had happened so quickly, it felt like just minutes ago I'd been waiting with everyone in the lobby. I'd been distressed in the tower, so why was I acting like nothing had happened? Was it just because I traveled to the past? Because there were 2 blank weeks ahead of me and there was no reason to go over things I'd worried about once already? That logic didn't make a lot of sense. I'd gone to the past to change it, and I hadn't known how far I'd go. Since I was in the hospital at the time, as long as I went to Atsuki's house, I'd be changing the past. If he saw 2 versions of myself, he would have to believe anything I said. But I didn't rush out of bed, and I probably knew the real reason why. It was sheer burnout. In a way, it was similar to how I'd felt before meeting up with Atsuki and Mia, a period when I had absolutely no idea what to do with myself. I'd gone nowhere and done nothing for an amount of time I couldn't measure. I'd lost track of days, existing solely in my apartment. It had been a major depressive episode at the very least, but getting back together with not only 1 friend but 2 was the remedy for that. That was what I'd thought anyway. Mia had died and I'd entered a coma. If I'd been living in a haze before, it evolved into a thick fog at that point. I was a shell of a person for a while, thinking almost exclusively about dangerously dark things. I was grateful that Atsuki hadn't given up on me entirely for everything I'd put him through. But it was a distinctly different situation. Rather than falling deeper into dysfunction, I had obtained a goal after going so far into the past. An abstract one, but a goal nonetheless. I kept lying there until my remaining tiredness dissipated. I knew I had to do something, but I didn't know what. I gathered the strength to sit up and looked at the window. Going off the strong light, I had slept for quite a few hours. My purse was next to the bed, so I grabbed my phone. 12:43. It really is late. As the buildings in Yushibana weren't very tall, and I was able to see a good deal of the snow-covered town from my room. It wasn't snowing, and the sky was pretty clear. From behind the window, I felt as if I was aware of the fate of the entire town, even though what I knew was only related to a modest fraction of all those buildings. The icy air quickly got to me, so I went to the hallway, carefully walking on the wooden floor so that I wouldn't stagger. I reached the heater, which I'd normally only turn on during the night since my parents were the ones who paid for my expenses and I didn't want to risk upsetting them. This will be fine, right? Nobody's supposed to be living here, but I doubt it'll be noticed that gas and water were used. I hesitated a little, but I needed to get rid of the oppressive cold. Seconds after I turned the heater on, it let out a buzzing sound from the pipes running behind the wall. I guess even if someone does notice, it'll be at the end of this month, or maybe after that. It should be okay. I had a water bottle on the table. I never liked drinking tap water, so I always spent a bit of my monthly money on bottled water. Filters just weren't enough. I didn't bother pouring it into a glass. The hours I'd spent in Ashia Tower no longer applied to my body, but I was extremely thirsty. To avoid grocery shopping too often, I usually had a cabinet packed with supplies. I would refill it at the beginning of every month, which was why it was almost empty. I looked inside and grabbed the bag of mixed nuts. As expected, they weren't very good, as they had sat in the cabinet all month, but I ate all of them almost instantly due to how hungry I was. I walked to the living room almost like it was routine. The blinds were keeping the space dim, but I rarely bothered raising them. After going to the bathroom, I stood in front of my wardrobe, wondering which clothes to change into. I'd lived alone for many months already, so I started the day as if it were a normal one. Is it worth trying to make it seem like nobody's been here? I don't know how, but if the past can be changed, I'm planning on doing it. There shouldn't be a huge need to hide my stay. Or is that right? Could it be that while I was in the hospital and at Atsuki's house, another version of me was already living here? There's no way, is there? That would mean that everything will happen as I remember it. If the past will only change if I consciously make it, it shouldn't matter whether in the reality that I know I was already living here. After all, I didn't come home for the purpose of changing the past. If it's like this, and I intend to say that up until I decide to change history, everything could play out exactly as it once did, it should be confirmation that I'll be able to safely stay here until the 15th. There's nothing that makes it an impossibility, so it could be that I always lived here and that I'm not changing the past yet. My parents never called me to say that someone was living at my place, and I never learned about it otherwise before the 15th, so I can secretly stay here, right? No contradictions. I didn't know if it would work like that, but worrying about it felt pointless. I chose some casual clothes to put on and stepped back to the living room. And now what? Even though I had spent a long while living alone in that apartment, I'd always had plenty of things to think about, all of which I'd ended up pushing aside. I wouldn't by chance remember a lottery winning combination, would I? The only reason why I hadn't thought that seriously was because I knew I didn't. Sai had mentioned using the Sekimeiya to win the lottery, but it wasn't actually that ridiculous of an idea. I didn't think it was greedy either. In fact, what felt selfish was not taking the chance when it was provided. If I could change the past, I would go back in time again, because that would allow Mia to be saved. That meant that before that point, I simply had to remember a winning number. That would create the possibility of a perfect future. Was I simply daydreaming in a hellish world? As long as the past could be changed, it didn't seem so. That future certainly felt attainable. Where's the Sekimeiya right now? Ashia should have it somewhere, but they must be protecting it from Sin, so there's no way I could touch it. Wait, no, that might not be the case. Kate and Surupo explained it to us. The Sekimeiya is merely bait for Sin to get trapped in the tower, so it's definitely there right now. They also said that the mechanism to trigger the alarm is based on the cabinet being forced open. Also, Sin never attacked before the 15th. Doesn't that mean that I can change the past by going there during the night and forcing the cabinet open? It's probably not in the event room yet, but it must be somewhere unavailable to the public. If I break it open, the alarm will lock me inside and someone else will be locked in the security room. According to Kate, he hadn't been taking the night shift recently, so it'll probably be someone else. Will they buy that I'm a Sin member? It sounded pretty dangerous. There could have been a way to travel to the past again, but if it didn't work, I would be caught by the police, ruining everything. Why were there times when touching the Sekimeiya didn't do anything? What if before the 15th it won't work, which is why nobody noticed its powers? Even if the main entrance of the building is locked, if the storeroom door did lead to the outside, I could maybe enter through it. There's no way I could take the entire cabinet out without triggering the alarm. Someone would be looking at the cameras and I don't even know where the cabinet is. But to begin with, why did I go so far into the past? I still don't get that. The Sekimeiya was in a water tank, but it couldn't have been there for very long. According to Atsuki, he had hidden it in one of the lockers a while before. Is it possible it gathered a lot of energy for another reason? Even thinking about it in my living room, there were many things I didn't know about the Sekimeiya. If I could be sure such a plan could work and I knew how to go days into the past, saving Mia should have been fairly simple. There's no way that I'll let everything happen exactly as it did already just so that I have the guarantee that the Sekimeiya will work, right? The unknown version of me that had been seen in the tower still haunted me. That couldn't be it. No, if I were to do that, I would also prevent Atsuki and myself from going. That's completely out of the question. I wasn't even sure about my situation. I hadn't appeared in the dark tunnel like every other time, instead of teleporting instantly. I had awakened, so I still felt like there might have been something I didn't remember. We thought about this once, didn't we? That perhaps traveling very far through time would make your memories foggy. Could that be why I feel this way? Is there something that I can't remember? I wasn't sure. If there were some memories missing, I had no idea how to get them back. I stood up from the carpet and went to my room. My purse was still next to my bed. I picked it up and put on my coat. Then I walked to the doorway where I'd left the keys I'd appeared with. I wanted to go outside. If it really was the first day of December and what I'd thought of applied, there should have been no issue with that. Nobody would be aware that I couldn't be walking in the streets. I put on my boots and opened the door. As expected, the air enclosed by all the mountains was overwhelmingly cold, but I really wanted to go out. On the snow were my footprints from the previous day, and some others ending at the nearby apartments. It was very rare for me to want to leave the house without knowing why. I usually only went outside with some purpose in mind. It was true that a lot of responsibility was weighing on me, but I didn't feel pressured. The freedom to make choices allowed me to remain relaxed to some degree. I looked at my purse. My wallet was inside it, containing the same amount of money I'd counted before leaving to meet Atsuki and Mia. Not that much. I closed the door and walked down the stairs. I live close to the outskirts, and there usually weren't many people around. That wasn't too different that day, as only a handful of people were slowly walking on the sidewalk, wearing overcoats and exhaling misty breaths. Maybe I really should have thought about where to go before leaving. I walked toward the center of Yushibana, every street looking identical due to the coating of snow. There were a few parked cars and a bunch of footprints on the ground, but the environment felt pretty desolate. Everyone was inside. Everything in the immediate vicinity was residential, so I kept thinking about where to go. I guess I don't have to go anywhere. I could just come back when I get tired. This is only for today, though. I seriously need to decide on what to do. There were enough citizens in Yushibana that it wasn't very common to know people on the street. That was what allowed me to be unafraid of being recognized and questioned about being in the hospital. Do I go to the tower? What would I even do? And what else is there in town? The library? How long has it been since I went there? Too long, honestly. I could try to eat something. It had also been a while since I'd eaten anything outside. I always had to use my money well and cook at home. I guess I can do whatever I want with the money that I have. It's been duplicated. I had my purse next to me when I woke up in the hospital, so the original money is there, and I'm thinking about winning the lottery. I arrived at the busier section of Yushibana, where I immediately saw a lot more people. Looking all around, I saw that not many stores were open. This might not be a good idea. I've been to all these places at some point. Is it possible that being recognized could be problematic? Would I be changing the past if I accidentally see someone who knows I should be in the hospital? There's no way what happened wasn't on the news. Even people who don't know me could recognize me. Nothing should happen. If someone sees it as a big issue, then the past has been changed, but that seems very unlikely. And there's no way anything would happen to me. Even if I'm found out, it wouldn't make getting to the Sekimeiya any harder. What would I do though? I wouldn't want to let Atsuki know. I already traveled to the past alone, going against what the Atsuki in the tower said. Was I being selfish again? Potentially hindering any attempt to save Mia? I hadn't personally seen the past change yet. Only Atsuki had said that it was possible, and even he hadn't known the full specifics behind it. The worst scenario simply seemed to be me having to use the Sekimeiya on the 15th, taking advantage of the attack. I turned toward a narrower street. As expected, Ina Cafe was open, as it was very rare for it to be closed. The barista there definitely knows me, and I need to understand better where I am. How will someone who knows me react if they see me on this day? I walked to the entrance, finally making up my mind. Through the glass I saw that the interior was empty, and Darfi was wiping down one of the tables. It had been a long time since I'd been there, but there'd been a time in my life where I'd frequent the place, enjoying the calm atmosphere. On the ground was a square carpet to clean the snow off my shoes. I used it before opening the door and timidly walking in, immediately feeling the warm temperature. Darfi didn't turn around yet, so I looked at what was on the menu. Like in the past, there were light drinks and meals, as well as alcoholic beverages closer to the night. Hello. Hello. He suddenly turned around. Huh. Shirya? Yeah, it's been a while. Oh my god, you're alright. So you know what happened? I am, yes. Of course, you were on the news. I managed a bitter smile in response to his relieved expression. I'm so glad you were released so quickly. How are you? I see. I really am supposed to be in a coma. I'm okay. I was released yesterday. Fortunately, nothing major happened to me. That's really good to hear. If you came to relax and try to forget about it, we don't have to talk about it. It's fine. You don't have to worry. Are you sure? I can't imagine what it must be like to lose someone close to you at your age. I'm so sorry. Thank you. Do you have any idea what happened? A lot of details weren't published. Unfortunately, no. It all happened suddenly and we were just caught up in it. He looked down, very clearly pitying me. Do you want coffee? I'm sorry I don't have much else right now. No, I don't think I need any right now. Are you sure? I can make you the Calamity special. What is that? That's nothing. That's the special. He cracked a half-hearted smile, obviously trying to cheer me up. I tried to return the look, but I wasn't sure if my own smile was visible or not. I looked behind the glass cover where a few pastries remained. I'm a bit hungry. I could go for this. I pointed at one covered with dried chocolate.
Of course, give me a second.
He moved behind the bar, removed it with metallic tongs, and put it on a small plate, which he placed in front of me.
Here, don't worry about asking for anything else.
Thank you. A bit into it. I was hungrier than I'd thought. So, what will happen when he realizes that I'm still in the hospital? I haven't heard anything about Darcy in a while, so if everything were to happen as I remember, he shouldn't do anything. I really don't like having to lie to him, though. I kept eating while he washed a few dishes left.
You're done? Do you want another one?
Okay, but thank you.
Alright, I'm seriously happy to see you, though.
I couldn't believe it when I saw your face on the news. Me too. Sorry for not having come in a while.
Don't worry about that. Are your parents here?
Daffy must have been in his late 30s, but he'd been a good friend of my parents who'd actually brought me there for the first time. I hadn't spoken to him that many times, but I figured he was familiar enough with me, as he'd known me since I'd been a kid. They aren't.
No? Will they come soon? They will, right?
I don't know. As of now, they'll stay overseas. He looked puzzled and disappointed. In fact, I did know that they wouldn't come. Even after waking from my coma, they would only talk to me through phone calls. That's right. What will even happen now? Two identical copies of my phone exist. How will calls work? I suppose it doesn't matter. If, when they call me, both phones receive the call, I'll just have to not pick up. If only mine rings, the past would be changing.
Do come here anytime you want. You're more than welcome.
I will. I just wanted to leave my home today.
I completely understand. That's good for you to do.
Yeah. I think I will have coffee.
Absolutely. How do you want it?
It's pretty late for coffee, actually. I'm not sure anything that's too strong. Anything that's not too strong and without milk or sugar.
As always, give me a second.
He grabbed the short transparent glass and filled it halfway.
Do you want it alongside anything?
He pointed at some bottles higher up. Those have alcohol, right?
Yes.
No, I've never had any of that.
I understand, but maybe you should. Last thing I want to do is make an alcoholic out of you, but it doesn't hurt in small quantities.
It's okay, I'd prefer not to. He nodded and filled it all the way up. I was kind of surprised he offered. I wasn't old enough to drink, and I could have gotten away with technically barely breaking the law, but I wasn't in the mood anyway. He left the glass next to the empty plates. As usual, it was overly hot. I stretched my hands behind my back and looked around me. I was the only person there. A newspaper. A few seats away there was an open newspaper that someone must have started to read and left. I pinched it and pulled it towards me. It should say today's date. I looked at the top right corner and as expected there was the date. It really is December 1st. Is this new?
The newspaper, yes.
I brought it closer and looked at the pages for current news. It was Yushi news, so events from Yushibana were highlighted. Me and I must appear somewhere in here. I flipped the pages toward the start, as I felt it should have been important enough to put it at the beginning. When I got to the initial 2, I stopped myself. Here it is. The category was November, and there were many brief articles. The last one was titled Gas Explosion Late at Night. I read the tiny letters next to a black and white picture of the shop. Mia Moiromo, a 20-year-old girl, is the only casualty of a local gas explosion that occurred in the evening of November 30th. Chiria Mirana, another young girl, 19 years of age, was gravely injured and immediately sent to the hospital. The condition is critical, although she wasn't directly hit by the explosion. The incident occurred when an unknown individual released smoke that caused 4 people inside to lose consciousness. The other 2 were too far from the range to receive any serious injuries. While everyone was unconscious, a heater depleted its surrounding oxygen after its flame went out, and when a visitor turned on the lights, an immediate explosion of short radius but intense force occurred. It killed the first victim instantly and broke the floor of the shop. The second girl, Mirana, was protected by the furniture next to her, but fell through the broken floor. It happened just like I remember, and it doesn't even say why the incident happened. Right on the 15th, when smoke knocked us out for the second time, I thought that both incidents must have been caused by the same people. That would be Sin. Wait, it actually is this. I'm not wrong. It was caused by Sin. That's why no further details got published. It's what Kate told us, that one time Sin had already tried to steal the Sekimeiya, but they'd failed. He almost caught the person behind it, but since they ended up escaping, it wasn't published that they'd been from Sin. Of course. In the attic I knew I recognized that smell. I'd smelled it in that shop. That's what happened there. Sin tried to steal the Sekimeiya before it was brought to Ashia Tower. Sekimeiya was in the shop, and for some reason Sin didn't succeed. Kate said that a member was almost caught too. That made sense as the outline of what had occurred, but it didn't mean anything to me aside from the fact that Mia's life had been taken during an attempt to steal a gemstone. At that point, did Sin know what the Sekimeiya would do, or did they attempt to steal just another simple gem that Ashia had? The advertising had just started. I huffed, frustrated and angry. I began to drink the coffee, and as I scanned the pages, more concise articles came into view. I read the title of one higher up on the page. Huh? Unknown man escapes from prison cell. Intrigued by the premise, I read the body of the article. In the afternoon of November 24th, the camera of a prison cell recorded a prisoner escaping from it. What? Is it talking about a prison here? I don't think there is one in Yushibana, so maybe it's just talking about holding cells in the police department. The identity of that person remains unknown. They were dressed as a prisoner, but no footage shows who they were or how they ended up in that cell. The corridor they were in was unprotected, as nobody should have been inside the cell. By the time the footage recording them was noticed, they'd already disappeared. As the prison cell should have been vacant, it wasn't locked. There was no security in that area, so it is possible the individual left the entire building. Their identity and the way they got to that cell are under investigation, but no method to reach it, such as a hidden passage between cells, was found to exist. What the hell? I never heard about this. I guess I don't really watch or read the news. Next to the paragraph was a picture. It showed a still black and white image of the footage, which displayed the bars protecting the cell. The door was open and the man could be seen leaving it. However, due to the high angle, his face couldn't be seen, and a single detail to go off of was his short, dark-looking hair. Bakuro? This person supposedly appeared in the cell, huh? I guess there are many unsolved mysteries I could solve by factoring in the Sekimeiya. Who's to say it hasn't been used in crimes before it's made its way to Ashia? I downed the rest of my coffee. It wasn't supposed to be strong and I didn't feel any reaction from it. At one point coffee had stopped always having a positive effect on me, and sometimes it would do more harm than good, so I'd stopped drinking it frequently. You're done. Do you want anything else? I'm fine. I stood up from the stool and looked at my purse. You're not going to try to pay me, are you? Don't even think about it. Oh, are you sure? Of course, and come back anytime you feel like it. I'm serious when I say that I was really glad to see you, and I'm relieved to see that you're alright. Okay, I really appreciate it. I don't want to stick my nose in your business, but I think you should talk to your parents. I can do it if you prefer. I can't believe they haven't come. Don't worry, I have been talking to them. I think I prefer to be alone though. Is that so? I see. I smiled and walked to the entrance. Seeing the desolate street from such a warm place made for a very pleasant contrast. Bye. And that's where we'll end this episode of the Sekimeiya Spun Glass. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you again next time. Till then, bye.